Hey everybody, it's Ann, and today I'm going to show you what I did to the bar area of the tavern to tie it all in. Stay tuned. Okay, do you remember how last week I took this beautiful room and turned it into this blue room and then turned it into this room and loved it? I mean, this color, the monochromatic theme, everything is just working so beautifully. But I have a problem. My problem is that the bar looks way darker than the rest of the room. And I really don't know what to do about it. Not only has it become a dumping ground for me, but it's just like a black hole. And the bar that I think is the best room in the house has now become my troubling area. And part of it is that dark, dark wood. And so I need to do some research to see what I can do about this. What would be authentic? What would be real? And so I turned to Pinterest, where I always do. Okay, so I want to start first with my Pinterest. I don't know how many of you do Pinterest, but if you're decorating, that is just the best thing to do. I mean, I'm sure you all do it. I can't imagine people aren't doing this anymore because you can just find every kind of thing and you can pin it and you can have your own. Like I have all my own little categories on here. Glamping, expressive therapies, autism, ceiling ideas. Now, I'm not exactly organized right, so I have ceiling ideas, Easter table setting, tiny bathrooms, minimal rustic, farmhouse restoration, farmhouse decor, farmhouse. See, I could put these all together a little better. This shows you I'm a little ADD, but whatever. And I have just a whole lot in here. So I went ahead and picked some out. I wanted to get some ideas for taverns, so I'm going to start right here. This is my favorite place. This is in Wayside Inn in Massachusetts, and it's a super fun right now. It's kind of a reproduction because the original had a big fire in it, so a lot of this has been rebuilt. But this is so cool. I remember the first time I came in here. There's a fireplace over on this end, and it was dark, and it was around Thanksgiving, and I came out of the cold air, and it's almost like you could just hear the horses, and you could hear the colonial people, and it's almost like you'd see the shadows of the colonial people milling here. It was just so cool. It was magical. And they have the soft glow at all the tables with the little lights. They've got the chairs painted black. They've got the red. So this is very similar to what I had before, is the red going around. They have lights like this, which intriguingly enough, I have these same lights. So my problem right now is that my lights do not work. So I have to figure out how exactly I can make them work. I think they're gonna have to be rewired. Might have to have an electrician do it. So I might have to call my electrician and see what he can do about that, because I really want to have my lights working. But anyway, here's the cage, and they've got cups hanging everywhere, the alcohol, and it's very cozy, very nice. Their floors are not finished. That's how they were originally in the colonial era. Our flooring has been finished. I'm okay with that. So that's one. But you'll notice this is painted red. The cage is painted. This one also, the cage is painted blue to match the trim. Some of these are probably, you can tell by these windows, these are not original. These are made to look old. This is made to look like a tavern. This is probably, could be someone's 80s or 90s house that's been reproduced, even 2000. This one also is a reproduction. But again, they're getting their cues from the colonial era. This is a pretty cool one. Again, painted green to match the trim. The walls are kind of a yellowish white. This one, very red and brown, dark, goes with the pewter. And there is a sign there in the tavern and an oil lamp. I have both of those things. This one would be more of a reproduction. I can always tell a lot of times, if people are going the country look and they're just collecting, And I'm not into the collecting as much as I want the authenticity, and I like to have a little breathing space. This would be actually a restaurant where they have a bar, and this is very dark. So, according to my Pinterest account, it's kind of a no-brainer. What I really should do is strip the wallpaper or paint over it the same white as is in the tavern. I should also paint over all that dark wood, get rid of that, and put the same color through the bar. It would tie the whole thing in, put a bunch of pewter in there, put my alcohol in there. It would look darling. I just know it. It would look darling. But I'm not going to do that because there is more to this story. You see, this place is historic. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful heiress named Marion Ream who fell from grace because she got a divorce, and she was so ashamed that she had to go away to Europe to get away from all of the media out there, all of the newspapers. And she met a handsome young man, 20 years her junior, in a bar in Paris, and his name was Anastasi Vansiaski. Now, Vanzi, as we call him, was a Russian fascist leader. He was well known around the world, and the truth is he had quite a following. And wasn't it a great opportunity for him to meet this rich, lonely heiress 20 years his senior and marry her, and therefore he would have all the money he needed so that he could fund going around the world and recruiting more and more people to overthrow communism with him. His sister and his brother-in-law were then living in China, and they were having a problem with people seeking his brother-in-law's life. So Marion gave Natasha Mammadov this building. And because she was such a great cook, she promptly turned it into a restaurant that lasted for 20 years. Now, this is why we are called the Russian Bear. And all around the area, the Russian Bear is known as a historic place. We have books written about it. I mean, let's face it, this is really part of world history. And this bar is also part of world history. I mean, look, there were even bottles of bourbon made just for the bar. So here we have this bar original to that time. They put the wallpaper in, they put these really cool lights in, they did all the woodwork and stained it dark, and this is all original to the Russian Bear restaurant. So what do? Do you erase that part of history and just say, oh, well, we used to have this here, even though 100 years of people have kept this going? No, you can't. But now I have a problem because I'm an anal decorator, and all I want to do is decorate appropriate to the time period. But the reason I bought this house in the first place was it was so cool, and this room was so cool, and the history is so cool, and I love to learn about things like this, and I am one person who will never erase the history of a place. So this gave me a dilemma. I can't erase the history of the place. Therefore, I can't make these rooms look good together. Therefore, what do? So I decided in the middle of all this that I would turn this bar area into a museum. Not the kind of a museum people are going to come to, except for my guests, but a museum that would honor some of the history of this house. So let's see what I decided to do. First, I consulted with my friend Kathy at Woodstock Country Shop, and we talked about painting the trim. So you know what? I did paint the trim around the windows. It was gold and it needed a refresher, so I could paint that without having any guilt over it. But then I really wanted to paint the doorway and to paint the rim around it to try to bring the color from the other room in and lighten it up a little bit. And so you know what? I did, but I took a quick look at it and hated it, and I washed it all off again. You see, the color that I had painted in the tavern really didn't go well with the yellow patina of the wallpaper, and it looked wrong, and suddenly I realized that was totally going to ruin the room, and I didn't want to do that. So I already had this great Russian Bear sign, left with the house, staying with the house, love it. And then I have this little bear that I picked up at Brimfield, totally a Russian bear. He goes perfect with the room. The next thing I did was gather whatever I could that had to do with that time period. So that auction sign is something I found here during the Mammadov's reign, as I call it. And I tried to take whatever placards and everything I made about the people that lived here, and I put them in there just like a museum would do it. I gathered some bottles from the bottle dump, and I lined the walls with placards and information about the people, just to make it more like a museum. This is a picture from my great-grandpa that he painted in 1925. I put it in there because it's the right time period, and it kind of broke up the wall, and it broke up the paneling and added some color, which was so needed in the room. Next, I got some pewter. Because there's so much pewter in the other room, I decided to incorporate it and bridge the gap of the pewter into this room. So I hung the pewter up and I put it on the shelf, and I even put a couple pewter plates in there just to tie the pewter into the room. And since the theme, of course, it is a tavern, it is a bar, so what you want to do then is give it some light and some fun and almost a carnival feeling. And since the holidays are coming, why not use some twinkle lights? It's a great way to highlight the room, it's a great way to bring more light in there, and it's a great thing to put over the top of this grated area and shine down on the pewter. So it kind of worked to tie it all in. Is it the perfect decorating idea? No, probably not. So I have to live with that because the history of this house is so much more important, and it's such a cool space. And in the event that I ever paint that other room red again, this is going to go perfectly. So I've left this room more as a museum, maybe a little junky, maybe a lot of clutter, but that's okay because it's a cool room. It's part of the history of this house, and it really needs to stay that way. Sometimes cool is more important than perfectly coordinated. So let's take one last look at this room.